Hi, I'm Jeanette Bennett, and today we're at Kiln for our Silicon Slope startup conversation. We have Sunny Washington with Because Learning, Karmel Larson with Momni, and Jill Dempsey with Wedding Line. And we're talking about ways to get your business funded. How do you get the money rolling in the right direction when you're a startup and when you're a mid-stage company? And so we have a great audience on hand and great panelists, and it's an awesome conversation today about venture capitals with three awesome businesswomen. I'd like to hear from each of you the origin story of your business and also include with that the financial part of that origin story, since that's one of the main focuses today.
What I'm doing in Wedding Line is I saw a huge opportunity and need in the wedding and event space to help consumers have a more palatable, sort of approachable way to pay for their weddings. So we have a membership model where you can pay for your event with monthly membership, and we offer membership benefits along with that.
My husband's a piano technician, and there came a time when having more children was no longer a blessing because of money. So I said, well, let's just get more money. So I got involved with him, and together we converted his piano tuning career into a piano dealership with 7 different revenue streams, a 24,000 square foot building. It became a multi-million-dollar business. We added a music conservatory with 150 students, and I thought, well, great, now I can go home and be that stay-at-home mom. But I learned about the global child care crisis, and as I did, the idea of Momni came to my mind. And when you have one of those life-shifting moments and you realize, oh, I think I could make an impact here. So I told my husband, I think we're supposed to launch the Airbnb of childcare.
My background is in working in education technologies. I connected with a company out in the Bay Area called Spire Global, and they build and launch satellites, tiny micro satellites, and they said, listen, we always wanted our satellites to be used for education purposes. We know how to do space, we have no idea how to work with education, so would you spin off a company that would leverage our satellite network and be education focused? I've been doing it since 2014, and over the course of time I've raised a couple $1 million, done convertible notes, priced rounds, equity crowdfunding, and it's certainly been a journey. It's definitely, I don't know, there's a lot that I didn't know when I started, so maybe like being naive was the best thing.
I think so.
Yeah.
When you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
We siphoned all the funds out of our piano store. We refinanced our house. We put everything into it. And in April of last year, we still hadn't got funding, and we ran out of money. The founders of Airbnb call this time the period between when you've maxed out everything and you still don't have funding, the trough of sorrow. So we laid off our team. We had no money. I went back to work the next Monday, because we hadn't yet failed. Momni was progressing, and so I didn't feel like I could quit. So I spent this time in the trough of sorrow from April of last year until August of 2018. I got verbal commitment for funding from Tamarack Capital and started putting together a round with additional angels, but it took us till December to actually get that funding. So almost a full year in that trough of sorrow, but we did it.
We had a fund of about $100 million that we invested in companies. So I was on that side of the table, but I was also, as I mentioned, operating those businesses. So I stepped in we would step in as CEO, CFO, COO, president, depending on what our portfolio companies needed. The last company that we had invested in that I stepped into was Manduka Yoga out in LA. So I bought that in 2012, end of 2012. I moved out to LA to help run that business, and we sold that in 2015. And so I was on the operating side of that. And also, before that, I'll say I had taught at BYU as an adjunct professor a class on financing new ventures for 7 or 8 years. So this is like my space. I've run a few businesses since exiting Manduka, and I've raised debt, I've raised equity, I've self-funded, kind of similar to what you said. I'm kind of like, spin the wheel. Like I've kind of had it land on every different format. And right now with Wedding Line, what I'm doing is I've self-funded it. I've brought on a little bit of capital. I'm currently raising a Series A.
At the time, everybody was raising $1 million seed. Like, that's just what you did at a 4.25 valuation, pre-money value. You know, it was like clockwork. It didn't matter what kind of business you had. Everybody was raising at those terms, convertible note, 20% discount, 4 million, you know, valuation cap or whatever. And so that's what I did. The challenge is that, you know, there is a lot of capital out there right now, but not all capital is equal.
Yeah.
You know, some of it comes with, I'll give you money if I can have a board seat. That means they have voting rights. Some of it is dumb money. You know, they just give it to you, they never contact you, they leave you alone, but they won't be writing you another check after that, you know. So you just have to be pretty strategic, as strategic as you can, because I know when you're a founder, you feel pretty, you're like, I need money to do this, and if I could just grow or just add these salespeople, you know, then I hit a certain revenue mark. So everything feels like, oh, if money would solve all problems, but money also causes a lot of problems. So I think you want to be pretty strategic on how you go after it.
So Karmel, you've been through this very recently. Tell us what you wish you'd known maybe a year or two ago.
That you can break all the rules.
Okay.
So I learned that too late. I went to some early accelerators and some trainings and got some mentors and read everything online and learned about Y Combinator. And there's some very specific things you'll hear that are like, this is the perfect formula for getting investment. You've got to have this 4-man team, and you've got to have the traction and all the things. And I was going for that like perfect model that I had to have all those things checked off. And what I realized when I spoke less to the mentors and the accelerators, and I talked more to people who had actually gotten funding, I realized it's lies. It's all lies. The only people you should be focused on pleasing are your users. For me, we had tons of PR and interest and just lots of buzz happening, and that really helped to compensate for some of the other check boxes that were unchecked. That had I waited until every box was checked perfectly, I still wouldn't have funding.
What are some other myths we could bust about funding today? Any of the three of you, Sunny?
I don't think funding is a sign of accomplishment or if you're going to make it. When they give you money, they're thinking, okay, we gave you $1 million. You should be at this much revenue and have this many customers. And if we weren't there, you know, they're like, well, then you didn't spend your money wisely, so we're not going to write you another check. And so I think like that was kind of surprising to me, because I was like, oh, you just raise the next round and the next round. Well, people aren't going to continue to give you money if they don't feel like you're hitting the metrics that you should be hitting.
In understanding where you want to go, that's going to help you identify the metrics that matter. So understand the metrics that matter and be confident in those. Those should drive your decisions, not what we might think an investor is going to care about.
So much bad advice from investors, like terrible advice, because what they do is you go in.
Apologies to any investors.
Well, I mean, I say it to their
good
face,
so
yeah. But the reality is, you know, they see 1,000 pitch decks. They listen to, you know, tens of pitches every week. And so they, you know, very quickly within 5 minutes, they're like, oh, I know how to solve your business, and I know that you should be doing this. And they don't, because they know this much, but they're so happy to give that advice. And it's easy to walk away as someone who's pitching and saying, well, if we just change our model to B2C, then maybe I could get a check from these guys. The reality is they're probably not going to write you a check anyway. So I think you have to be, when you are looking for investors, you have to make sure that they invest in the types of companies that, you know, might be like yours, or they might have some expertise in that area if you want to take their advice. Because if they don't, like, I think it's just, you can get whiplash. You know, someone will say, well, you need to move into a SaaS model, and someone will say, oh no, you should do hardware only, and you know, and you'll just be getting whiplash, and the reality is no one knows your business better than you do.
That's great advice. And all of you have said essentially that, like, don't change for them. Do what's right for you.
Although I would say be open to change, because I have also had tremendous course-changing advice from investors and mentors, so I think you get some of both.
That's true.
That's a great point.
Well, and I've been an investor and am an investor now, so I like wear both hats, and I think it's healthy to have that perspective, because what are you as a business owner? I would like to think you're an investor, right? What are you spending all your time on? you're investing in that business. So really, we're all investors, and we have different perspectives, and we're investing our resources and time and capital in that. And so just remembering that, hey, you're an investor too in your business.
I love that. Let's stick with the metrics and the math topic for a second and talk about how much money, how do you know how much money to raise? One of my most interesting articles that I wrote was about a failure. And one of the quotes that just stuck out to me was, he said, too much money makes you stupid. And he talked us through how he got all this funding, and the business fell apart. They had amazing desks, and they had an amazing executive team and all of that. So how do you know how much money you need? And do you take advice from investors on that? How do you do that math? Talk us through those math decisions.
I mean, I really think like a business model. I mean, a spreadsheet is the best predictor of that. So I mean, you forecast, and the reality is your forecasts are going to be wrong. But it's a start. It's like, because you need to account for, if you bring on employees, how much does that cost? You rent an office, how much does that cost? And really kind of understanding what your expenses are going to be, and also what you think your revenue is going to be. It costs money to make money, a lot of times, but so I think like that's something that you definitely need to do. I will guarantee that it'll take twice as long and probably twice as much money as you think it will to start your company. I mean, it is easy for your burn to get away from you. So, burn meaning your expenses, then, add your revenue. And from my standpoint, I've made some mistakes in the way that we spent money. Hired a big team too quickly and didn't have the revenue that came in. So if I had to do it over again, I would be a lot more judicious about the way I spend the capital that I raised.
So I think it's important to begin with the end in mind, which for me is the next step. So I know I want to get to a Series A. Right now we're not yet pitching, but we will be pitching for a $10 million Series A round. And so if I know where I want to be, then I've just got to reverse engineer that. How much money do I need in a seed round to hit the metrics that I feel would be appealing, a no-brainer for any investor to get that Series A with little trouble? And then I just spent hours and hours and hours in meetings with advisors and mentors who know finances better than I do. And we just worked the budgets. And you have to make those, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. This is where we need to be. This is the budget we think can make it happen with. And then once we got that money and actually started spending our budget, almost every day I tell my team, we need to spend like we don't have any money. My desk is a used desk from our piano store still.
The reality is, if you are a female or a person of color, you will have a harder time raising money. That's just statistically what's been happening. You receive, black female founders receive less than 1% of the funding.
I had the advantage of naivete in this category. I wasn't aware when I started pitching that this was an issue. I am now, because everybody's made a big deal out of me getting funded. So I would behave as if it wasn't an issue.
Surround yourself with great people. And whether that's Utah, that's the coast, it's going to be all of the above, right? Find your people. I call it my tribe, find your people. And sometimes you're going to find your people. And so sometimes you're going to do a pitch and be like, not my people. And then you're going to do another one, so my people. Can we go to dinner tonight? Because I want to learn more from you. And I love that conversation.
If they're your people and you want them to invest in a round, you should be emailing them at least once a quarter and saying, this is where I'm at.
Figure out where you're going and what metrics are going to help you figure out if you're getting there. I have a strategy where I've figured out my people and people that I want them to figure out that want me to be my people. Yeah. They're people too. And I reach out. Yeah. And I reach out to them quarterly, and I literally have a reminder in my calendar, and I reach out to them and I say, hey, hope you're doing well. Here's an update for you on what I'm doing. Here's my metrics. Last time we talked, I was here. Now I'm here. And here's a few questions for you I'd love to engage with you on. The next time I'm in town, could I take you to lunch? And I'd love your thoughts. And building that relationship in a really authentic way is super important, I think.
Mm-hmm. The requirements, I think, to raise capital at this point has gone up because, and the reason is because it's cheaper and cheaper to start companies, especially software companies. So you may be able to find some, like maybe angel investors, friends and family that will want to fund like almost pre-product, pre-revenue ideas, but I think you're gonna have a really hard time. So my advice to you is I would try and build as much of the product as you can, get market validation and some indication that you're building that's something that people want, and then go out and raise money. Because the reality is when you're raising money, it takes up so much of your time.
I would say pitch like crazy even before you're ready. So one of my early business friends said, if you ask for money, you'll get advice, and the more you ask for advice, you'll get the money. And if you've got to get in, I think most of us have said you got to get like 50 plus pitches before you're actually going to get funding. I think I did about 70 or so. And so you can only get in 1 or 2 a week usually. So do the math of how long it's going to take you to get funds. And so I think even before you're ready, you can start asking, ask the richest person or the most successful person you know if you can just come to a practice pitch. I'm just learning and I have my first pitch deck. Could you listen and give feedback? You'll learn so much from that process and learning what they're going to ask in the Q&A. And you need that time to just refine your own presentation, understand what people are going to ask, and every practice pitch asking for advice, ask for 2 more introductions, and your confidence grows, your ability to pitch, your pitch deck gets better. You need that time to refine and prepare.
That approach was great for you. My approach is different. My approach is like, I'm not doing 70 pitches. But we've all learned I have opinions, right?
2 things come to mind that I learned from my male mentors. One, I learned from Darren Hill. He has coached me and said, every time you enter a boardroom, if the head of the table is open, take it. Immediately. Demand respect and let them know that you're in charge and you are comfortable sitting at the head of the table. If you're going to ask for millions of dollars, you need to feel comfortable sitting at the head of the table. So I've made that a habit. And secondly, you need to have confidence in yourself and in your business, and you need to shift the way that you present so that you present that the investors are getting the prize. You're not getting the prize by getting their money. And his vote of confidence was life transforming. And the next time I went and took the head at a boardroom table, I pitched from that perspective, inviting them. Would you like to win this prize, me and my company? And it is a different dialogue.
That's great advice to end on. Let's give one more round of applause to Jill.